All right, very good. Gerard Hector here with BSO, and we are at the Lincoln Filmmaker Lounge at the Tribeca Film Festival. And we are so pleased to be joined by Camilla Hall, the director of Cop Watch. Camilla, thank you so much for taking some time with us. Cop Watch is a film about a community organization called We Cop Watch. And their focus is to film police interaction with citizens and to also arm local citizens about what to do in the event of an interaction with local law enforcement. So I want to sort of get into the film, but before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about your background. You started your career as a journalist. So how did being a journalist prepare you specifically for making this kind of documentary film?
I'd been a journalist for about 7 years in New York, and then also in the Middle East for 5 years. And I think I'd always been driven to just human stories and very kind of stories that just kind of had to be told. And I think really when I met Kevin Moore in Baltimore, and I also started to talk to Jacob, I realized that kind of these were guys who really did have an important story that needed to be told. And I think that background in journalism allowed me to just kind of act on that immediately and have confidence that that was the right thing to do. And so I think that's really kind of the main experience that I got. And then of course, just I've been interviewing people on a daily basis for 7 years, so that's very kind of natural to me.
So with journalism and filmmaking, the idea is storytelling, right? So when you go into doing something like Cop Watch, how difficult or how do you balance storytelling versus narratives, right? And by narratives, sort of like, filmmaking's ideology, right? So here's how I feel about a particular subject matter, doing that versus, I just want to tell this story.
And I think there's a really interesting contrast, because I think within journalism there's a lot more scope for nuance. You can use words to describe the environment. In film, you're really playing with whatever you've got on camera. So I did find that quite different between the two things. And that was kind of an enjoyable experience, but also working with, I didn't shoot the film myself. I had a director of photography, Adriel Gonzalez, and a second camera, and just also to kind of work within what they saw and what was like what they were seeing through their eyes as well was kind of an interesting, a different set of tools to be working with.
Absolutely. So now on to Cop Watch. As I said, it's a very sort of poignant time in not just America but the world, really, given our the political things that are happening. So with Cop Watch, what drew you into wanting to tell this particular story about these particular citizens? It uses very specific examples that have occurred here in America. The Freddie Gray fatal incidents, Eric Garner. I mean, there are a number of current incidents that it uses. So what drew you to want to tell that story?
I think to me the thing that interested me most was actually that there were relationships being built between these people who had gone through similar experiences. And there were times kind of towards the beginning where people were saying, look, why don't you interview all these other instances? Like, there's so many cases to look at. And it was important to me to pick a small number of cases to look at where we could really kind of connect with the individuals in those instances. So it was really like the idea that this was a whole family of people, and I could really look at kind of how they supported each other. That was something that really kind of interested me, as opposed to a kind of broad view, talking heads, experts kind of feel.
One of the things I found interesting was the focus on Ramsey Orta, who was the friend of Eric Garner, who actually videotaped and recorded the incident with police and the fatality. He is what you would consider in filmmaking a tragic hero, right? So in detailing Ramsey's story as a part of the larger Cop Watch film, how did you sort of navigate the tragic hero versus sort of, here's the story I want to tell?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of learned in some ways from Jacob Crawford, who's a co-founder of the group, and he said, we always meet people where we're at. And I think what I tried to do as a filmmaker was not try to impose kind of perceived notions of what a hero should be, but really try to be honest to who Ramsey was, and to try to kind of highlight the strange things about his case, but also not to kind of blanket the story in a way that wasn't accurate to what happened. And I think that was definitely an interesting challenge about making the film, like being true to the story, and also true to the characters of the people involved, and trying to be fair in the approach. And I think Ramsey's story is quite complex and difficult, and you'll see in the film itself there's some very difficult moments as a filmmaker where I had to really think, what's the right way to go about this moment. But I hope you feel that we found a good way to do that.
Oh, absolutely, and also with and his name is escaping me, the man who who was going to testify for Freddie Gray down in he's not quite as tragic, but also a sort of a tragic situation there. So when you're looking at that, I think with documentary filmmaking versus sort of making any other kind of film, is that sort of you just let that story happen the way it happens, or you're saying no, there's still a level of care you have to take when talking about real people?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I'm in touch with these guys all the time. I get calls from Ramsey in prison, and just try to kind of, let him know what's going on with the film and kind of try to keep him positive while he's inside. But yeah, I think, it was a very hard year, I think, for the group as a whole. I mean, they lost Ramsey, there was a lot of disappointment, and we wanted to be honest to what was going on, but at the same time, not have people lose faith in the idea that they could try to help to change the system. I think one of the main themes of the film is this kind of David and Goliath, and these are guys trying to do what they can to fight a system that is much, much bigger than them.
Absolutely. And you talk about filmmaking and Cop Watch in particular. This filmmaking is ideology, right, in some form or fashion. So for you, again, how do you look at your personal politics, your ideology in making a film like Cop Watch? We talked briefly before we started about, if anyone can't tell, she's not from America. She's from England. So being a British woman, how do you look at making a specific story like this that is so American?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways, perhaps one of the reasons that I was given access was because I was kind of so alien and different, and it was kind of harder to judge my prejudices or my thoughts kind of from the jump. And I guess just my background in journalism has meant that I've always kind of tried to have some kind of distance from the subject matter. I wouldn't say that I'm an activist, like I'm a filmmaker and I come from a journalist background, and I think just really trying to, I guess, use this experience. I worked as a journalist in kind of many foreign countries, and essentially just recognizing this thought of, this is strange, like why is this happening, or why does this person feel this way, or and then recognizing that kind of is something to act on, I guess. But it's something I've definitely struggled with. I think it's a really important question of who should be telling these stories, and it's something that I've tried to think about a lot, and talk to a lot of people in the community, and I'm looking forward to kind of collaborate or co-direct in the future with with African American film directors, and kind of get to know more people, and just try to listen, I guess.
And do you think that because of your background in journalism, that documentary filmmaking and telling, I mean, all stories are true depending on what version you're telling, but telling real and authentic true stories is going to be where you focus as now a filmmaker and a producer?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I always try to, I guess, focus on stories where somebody tells me something in a way that I had never understood it before. And I think my conversations with kind of Kevin and Ramsey early on, of this feeling in particular of just their relationship with the police and how different it was to anything that I had ever experienced, and their ability to just explain that to me in a way that I will never understand fully, but was just starting to try to understand at least a little bit of the idea of kind of, every time you come out of your building that there's a cop waiting who's going to ask you for ID, who's going to just those kind of interactions would be so different than I would ever experience. And I think just the way that they conversed with me and kind of told me about their lives, I felt that could, that other people could benefit from hearing that.
I want to get to the nitty-gritty of sort of the logistics of making a film.
Yeah, sure.
So you took countless hours of interviews and footage. I'm sure a lot of stuff was on the cutting room floor. What's on the floor that you wish made it to the film? It didn't?
That's a great question. So I actually worked with an editor called Grace Zaharoff. And she's very young. She's a female, and this was her first film that she edited. And I think there was just so much kind of heart and care taken into how to kind of, how to tell these stories. And I'm trying to think of a scene that there's so many great moments. I mean, I think that the thing that I feel sad that couldn't have been in there was probably, we spent a fair amount of time with Ramsey before he went in. And, there were some great moments within that, we realized that this isn't a film about a man going to prison. It was bigger than that, so we had to kind of make that decision in the edit. We also shot, Dave was arrested while we were filming, and we didn't include that story either because we didn't have time. And I guess the one more, the kind of, I think one of the most interesting cases actually was a moment in St. Louis where my entire crew, 6 of us, we got caught in the middle of some very intensive gunfire, and it was a very dangerous, frightening situation, and the footage was very exciting and vice and all this kind of these moments, but it wasn't actually relevant to the story. So, and it was never about us as filmmakers putting ourselves in danger to make a film. It was about these guys. So that was kind of an interesting thing that I think other people might have said, why isn't that in the film?
That's actually fascinating. So in that moment, as a journalist and a filmmaker, you're like, keep the cameras rolling.
Oh,
but
yeah.
you're also there are bullets flying around.
Yeah, the cameras were rolling, definitely, and there were a lot of bullets. In fact, the camera shows my DP running into it and grabbing my arm and pulling me out and saying, Camilla, calm. I didn't realize, but I was crouched behind somebody that was shooting the gunfire. But it was a very intense scene, but it just wasn't relevant to the broader narrative of the story, which was complex enough in itself. So yeah, I guess maybe that one's the kind of most interesting one.
Last one. So this is your first film.
Yes.
So going into the process, what is something that you went in thinking was going to be, you were very prepared for, that you maybe weren't, and then what's something that you thought, I don't know how we're going to do this, but you were actually better prepared for it than you thought?
I don't think I was prepared for this at all. I mean, I think what I've been through the last year and a half, it was pretty rough and tough, and it started tough, so it didn't get, it actually got easier as opposed to harder. It's really hard to think of a specific thing, but yeah, essentially I think anyone going into a documentary from the beginning, you've just got to be so committed and willing to just give up everything around you to be able to get it done, and that's what the whole team kind of did on this. So
great. Well, Camilla, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you.
Cop Watch will be premiering at Tribeca Film Festival April 23rd. Thanks for watching.